Hello, and welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. Tyson Foods recently introduced a climate smart beef program, which includes an accounting framework to model greenhouse gas emissions from cattle from pasture to production. In addition, the company recently launched Brazen Beef, the first beef product to receive USDA approval for a climate friendly claim by demonstrating a 10% greenhouse gas emissions reduction from pasture to production when compared to standard emissions for conventionally raised beef. Joining us today to talk about these new innovations are Dr. Justin Ransom, Senior Director of Sustainable Food Strategies at Tyson Foods, and Chad Martin, Vice President, Cattle Procurement for Tyson Fresh Meats. Welcome, Chad and Justin. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I want to remind all of you that are joining us here online to, if you have any questions, be sure to post those in either your social media feed or to the chat window here off on the right-hand side of your screen. And we'll make sure to get those to Chad and Justin as we move through this interview. So Justin, let's start with you. Talk to us a little bit about your background and what it is that you do at Tyson Foods.
Background, I grew up in production agriculture. We had stocker operation, wheat pasture in North Texas, and run stockers on it. And ultimately, I had a passion about livestock production in the beef industry, but I kind of had a long way to get to this seat today. And everything from starting my career at USDA during the BSE crisis in 2004 to working for McDonald's most recently to where I'm at today. Been at Tyson Foods for 5 years and lead sustainable food strategy, where we try to support the business in making decisions about the long-term sustainability of Tyson Foods in total, and how do we do our part in raising the world's expectations for how much good food can do.
Chad, what about you? What's your background and your role at Tyson?
Yeah, thank you. I also grew up in Texas, like Justin, in production agriculture. I'm in a cow-calf ranching environment, family with mainly with my grandparents. And as I went through school and went through college, I started almost right out of college with IBP Tyson at the point in time, and I've been mostly involved over the last 25 years with beef, but I've got experiences in food safety, regulatory, beef, pork, and also in chicken. And so today, my responsibilities include this alignment of the supply chain to procure cattle that end up meeting the needs of our customers and consumers across our entire business.
So, Justin, before we dig into the specifics of these new initiatives, talk to us a bit about Tyson Foods' overall ambition to create a sustainable food system.
It fits into our purpose as we think through what it is we're trying to do, and which was what I said a second ago, raising the world's expectations for how much good food can do. As we think through that, how do we deliver on that to our consumers, our customers, to shareholders, frontline team members? As we think about sustainability very broadly, people is first and paramount to everything that we do relative to our business. But also as we think about, from frontline team members to producers to everybody that we interact with, how do we put people front and center, but recognize that the products that we produce are important, and everything that goes in them, from food safety and animal welfare and climate, and where our value chain has the opportunity to make decisions that can have a positive impact that helps make us and our supply chain more resilient. And so I work to bring business and business solutions to meet sustainability solutions that ultimately we can be profitable and productive and resilient for years to come.
So let's talk about the Climate Smart Beef program and how that fits into Tyson's overall sustainability goal. I don't know if Chad or Justin, which one of you want to take that one?
I'll start.
Okay.
Really, this has been a long time coming. 2 years ago, we were being asked to consider to make a net zero commitment relative to emissions. And before we could make that commitment, we really need to understand, would it be possible to ever be a net zero company? And so we hired or asked some scientists to do some work for us from different universities to see, is there a pathway to climate neutral beef? And all while doing that, our CSO and president of the beef business got together with the board and said, really, we need to think through, how do we bring something like this to market? And with the support of scientists, we ultimately found there's a pathway, but it was really complicated. And so we brought different partners along with us and thinking through, how do we pull data out of the supply chain and ultimately work with NGOs, with Deloitte, with cattle feeders to think through, how can we pull data through the supply chain that ultimately can tell a story about the sustainability of beef. As producers change practices, how can we make beef more sustainable than it is today? And then how can we validate the practices that are taking place and the impacts they have on the overall sustainability of beef? And it's been a journey coming for the last 2 years. And so finally being public with it a couple of weeks ago is something that the team is excited about, and launching it in a brand called Brazen.
I was going to say, it goes into a branded kind of product, and you have Brazen Beef, and that is kind of, like you said, the next step in taking what you developed and actually taking it to the market, I would assume. So Chad, tell us more about Brazen Beef. What is that all about?
Yeah, so we developed the supply chain, as Justin was referring to, and it's been over 2 years in the development, and taking the framework, the accounting framework that you had mentioned at the very beginning of this broadcast, the accounting framework, and being able to align back within that supply chain with producers, farmers, ranchers, also with other partners such as where food comes from, and then ultimately where the animals are finished with Adams Land and Livestock. We're able to have data associated with these animals as they progress through the supply chain to be able to measure and ultimately label at the 10% reduction in greenhouse gases. And so it's the final culmination here as we've launched the program of all the work that's been done to be able to validate and verify those practices all the way back to the ranch.
So is Brazen Beef, is that considered, all the kind of buzzwords, all natural, organic, grass fed, antibiotic free? How does that fit? And probably the other question too would be, how does it tend to grade?
Yeah, great questions there. No, this is not an all natural, no antibiotics ever, no hormone treated. Those are all different attributes for other programs that meet certain consumer desires or needs. This is not even breed specific, right? This is these are beef animals that come through the production system and the supply chain, and then ultimately are being labeled from a brazen beef product. And you asked specifically about grade. This actual program is a choice only grade, and so most of it is grading at a very, very high level with the practices that we have in place and the type of animal and genetics that are out there.
So let's go back a little more to that accounting framework. And so how was it developed, the Climate Smart Beef Program framework? Justin, is that something you'd like to address?
Sure. So as I mentioned, it really started with Dr. Toma, who was at the University of Arkansas at the time. He's at AgNext now. He's the primary author of the model that we started with, and as many people know, he's one of the foremost experts in LCAs and modeling for different segments of the industry. So that's where we got started. Then ultimately we brought a Deloitte team in, and it started with a Excel file that to put all the data from one animal in it. It took 3.5 hours to run it, and today with the help of Adams Land and Cattle and SQL database, pulls data through much quicker using all the complexities of that original model, and really having the Deloitte team being a partner, looking over our shoulder to be able to make sure that all the data matches up appropriately in the data catalogs, and that we can have confidence in what the system puts out.
Really important to get that data right as you're moving forward with something like this. So, what about the greenhouse gas emissions as part of the program? How are those measured?
Well, it all goes back to models initially. I think as everybody knows, that in the life cycle assessments, they're all modeled outcomes, and then ultimately we'll have measure, monitoring, reporting, and verification that takes place along the way. I think the reality is it's how all these things are connected, and ultimately, as we improve pasture management, we have improved carbon sequestration that offsets the methane emissions that are produced on farm. And as this cycle works, how do we help or work with producers to improve or reduce methane emissions and total emissions? But I think it's kind of one of the end-to-end work that certainly we're just getting started, and recognize on this journey that there's going to be new ways to engage producers in this conversation, and we're looking forward to it.
So what about incentives at the farmer and rancher level? Are there things you're doing or things they should consider when they're looking at adopting climate smart ag practices that would help to reduce the global greenhouse gas emissions and improve the environment? Is there Fill us in on what that looks like or what's going on there, if you would.
I think we look at the front end. We'll talk incentives and I'll talk value in a second. But really the very first and foremost part of the process is the ranch becomes, through where food comes from, becomes beef care certified, and that beef care certification becomes a foundation that looks at rotational grazing, looks at water conservation, looks at the production practices, fertilized practices, and then within the Brazen program itself, there's an additional questionnaire to get some more of those specific data points that come from that. But ultimately, you think about this as from a beef care certification. That's the starting point for the ranch, and it's those practices. And I'm here to tell you that our farmers and ranchers across this nation have great practices in place. I'll say the incentive is now we have the baseline through the data that we've collected. We have the baseline to be able to show and demonstrate, verify, and actually label what's happening throughout the supply chain. So, and in doing that, being able to start with that first foundational part of this is just initially to get the ball rolling. Second part, as I interpret from the question, is incentivizing the farmers and ranchers to adopt these. And so the value proposition in my mind is twofold. Number one is data. And here's something that is so powerful within this program is the performance, the production data associated with these animals once they leave that ranch. Once they continue to move through the rest of the supply chain, stocker, background, feedlot, all the way to the plant, the performance of the animal from that particular herd then is we have the ability to pass that back to the rancher and the ranching family, the company, whomever that it is that owns it. And being able to have that type of information is key to them being able to ultimately continuously improve their process to make animals that are more valuable. So I mean, it's an underlying value associated with this program that is really exciting for me. And the second part of it is the market value, right? This market is just developing, right? We are on the cusp. This is some of the first initial product lines that are coming out, and we're developing this value as we continue to drive this product and deliver it to the consumer. That will continue to develop. We as Tyson are investing in the supply chain. We are investing in trying to incentivize those practices that we know that some that I mentioned earlier, such as rotational grazing as an example, that do enable us to and the rancher to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that they have.
We do have a question that's come in from the audience here, and it's asking whether Tyson will pay more for cattle that come off of carbon credit grazing land and that are fed feed from carbon credit based fields. So, what do you guys, have you addressed that? Have you thought of that?
Yeah, that's we're constantly assessing that, and that's, as I talked about, this current marketplace. The market is not developed yet on that. All the animals that come into the program from off of the ranch today go into the Adams land and cattle system. They are the ones that are procuring the animals, and there is a level of incentivization to reward for those type practices are out there, but we're still trying to develop the market to see what is that actually worth. Right. And so the short answer is there's a yes, but it's not clear right now because we're developing this together. And as we continue to evolve, the marketplace will become clearer on that. It will help define that.
So probably that.
To add into that a little bit, I think sometimes there's a little bit of confusion relative to carbon credits. And we're looking at this as insetting in our value chain. So as we go and buy cattle at beef care certified cattle that are participating in these kinds of programs, they cost a little bit more, right? And so we're insetting, we're paying for practice change ultimately, and the that's referred to as insetting within our own value chain. What you might see or hear of is energy companies participating in offsetting or buying carbon credits from farmers and ranchers for the practices that they're doing. So those farmers and ranchers are creating a credit, and they're selling that sustainability to a transportation company or energy company. So that's an offset. So those cattle won't qualify for this program because the offset has already been sold. So we're trying to work in a way that we can incentivize production systems that we buy cattle from, or the Adams Land and Cattle buy cattle from, and pull those animals through the value chain, and that we can invest in insetting that helps us as we set science-based targets, helps us meet those targets that we're held accountable to.
That was my question I was just going to ask you. So our regenerative farming methods, are those encouraged as part of this program? Are they required? Are they verified? What does that look like under the Climate Smart Beef program or the Brazen Beef program?
They're really fundamental to the practices that we want to see in our value chains are fundamental to regenerative agriculture. There's no set definition that, there might be a lot of definitions for regenerative agriculture, but there's no one set definition. But the practices that we're talking about, so whether in row crops you're talking about no-till and cover crops and nitrogen optimization, those are regenerative practices. Prescribed grazing, silvopastures, overseeding, those are practices in pasture land management that are also regenerative. So there's a host of different programs out there that really kind of gets at what regeneration looks like to us. It's important to note that as we were developing this program, we worked with the TNC to look at the question for them to look at the questions we were asking producers to understand is that in fact getting you the information you need to be able to make the implication of what could be a reduced emission. And we worked with the Environmental Defense Fund on the row crop side relative to nitrogen balance and optimizing nitrogen use in row crop production. So it's really bringing the NGOs into the conversation as we make sure that we have the critical thinking on, are we doing this right, and how do we think about this holistically and find solutions that really can make the impact we're looking for.
A reminder to our audience, if you have any questions, to please feel free to post those in the chat or in your social media feed. So let's turn a little bit here to the retail level. Are there any incentives for retailers to opt for more environmentally sustainable meat products? Chad, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll start with it, and Justin may have some to add in. I think that the incentive from a retail standpoint is, we're all part of this beef industry, and the goals that we have set forth for continued greenhouse gas reduction, and what we hear the consumer saying that they want and what's out there. We're aligning together and going to be able to give that to them. So the incentive to be part of the program is not just an individual beef program by itself, but the broader view of what we're trying to do as we lead the continued evolution and long-term sustainability of beef and the beef industry.
That's right. And I think, whether it's food service or retail, our partners that we sell products to directly, our customers, direct customers, a lot of them have set some of these aggressive targets, and they're trying to figure out how do they go to market and be able to meet their targets. And so this is a solution that we hope resonates with them, as we're able to not only tell a story like we might do with a traditional claim, but ultimately have data to be able to share that these are the practices that are working. This is the impact of those practices, and this is why we believe beef can be sustainable.
So we do have a question along these lines that have come in from the audience. To what extent are retailers discriminating with regard to demand for minimum greenhouse gas reduction as they shape what they want in the meat case? Is a 10% a starting point, moving to a 20% in 2 years? What is the limit that you think is attainable from your program objectives?
I'll start with that, and Chad can chime in. I think this is a journey, right? And we're just getting started. And we are going to be looking at every part of the value chain and what are the solutions that are on the horizon. The real big opportunity here is methane. Okay, methane has 28 times the warming potential of CO2. And so if we can find technologies that reduce methane, that's going to help us meet our targets much quicker. And how do we incent the value chain to use technologies that reduce methane? They can also, while reducing methane, improve feedlot performance or performance in the pasture or feedlots. So there's a lot of new things that are on the horizon that's really exciting. Ultimately, by 2050, we'll have the largest population of humans ever on the face of the earth, with probably more pressure than ever before in terms of climate. And we have to feed all of them. And so we've made a commitment to net zero by 2050. So this is just the first step on a long journey, and hopefully I'll be retired by 2050. But the reality is we've got a lot of work to do between now and then.
Chad, you want to add anything into that?
I think I was well said. This is a journey, right? And as I alluded to earlier, we've got the program from a Brazen Beef standpoint. Got in climate smart beef. It's what we learn from this and what we can do from a leadership standpoint for the overall industry, right? And so we're on this together. We want to make sure we're doing our part and we're continuing to lead in this area. And so to actually put a number into the question as it was asked, I don't know if that's necessarily possible, but we've got to continue to improve and continue to tell the great story of beef and beef in the U.S. going forward.
So when we talk beef, is it possible to have a beef product that's both climate friendly, consumer friendly, kind of everything for everyone? Is that what your whole vision is? Would you say, Justin?
It is. I mean, the whole start of this was how do we bring a product to market that the consumer, the beef producer, and Tyson Foods are all excited about, and having having partners and NGOs supporting us along the way, having some of the best scientists supporting us along the way, and we think we've done that in the Brazen brand. It's exciting to see the work that the team has done with the large team has done with bringing this all together from technical angles to marketing angles to communications to supply chain development, important partners in the feedlot, bringing it all together to put a package, an option for consumers to be a part of something that's really exciting, and certainly proud of the team that's pulled it together.
Just a note, too, that we have posted the Feedstuffs article on this whole initiative by Tyson in your chat if you want to check that out. So as we wrap up here, I just want to get any kind of closing thoughts, anything that you folks want to leave our viewers with. Chad, let's start with you.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks again for this opportunity. It is exciting. And when we started out, we talked about backgrounds. There's a passion for beef, a passion for this industry, and our long-term views. And it feels really good to be part of the team here at Tyson that we're trying to help lead that and continue down this road. In talking with producers right at the front line, just in the last day or two, they're very inquisitive. They want to understand more about it. And then it's really rewarding to be able to have those conversations with them. They understand that what we're doing is science-based, that we put a lot of work and thought behind it. There's a bigger vision behind it than just the brand itself. And so it's an exciting time. I hear excitement from them as we talk through it. And we're going to continue to evolve and drive this forward.
Justin, any closing comments from you?
Well, I don't think I can. I can't say any more than Chad has, other than this is about continuous improvement, and sustainability is by definition or not definition, but the reality is sustainability is about continuous improvement, and this is just taking a next level of transparency of continuous improvement in our beef value chain. We're excited about it, and we appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you today.
Well, thank you both for being with us today as well. Appreciate your insight and your time. Dr. Justin Ransom, Senior Director, Sustainable Food Strategies at Tyson Foods, and Chad Martin, Vice President, Cattle Procurement at Tyson Fresh Meats. We appreciate all of you tuning in here, all of you in our audience. I want to do a couple quick reminders. Coming up next week on Feedstuffs 365, we're going to start off with Richard Brock of Brock Associates. He's going to be joining us to talk about the recent bank failures and if there's going to be any fallout for agriculture from those. That is on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. And then on Wednesday, we have Mike Steenhoek, who will be with us with another live discussion to talk transportation outlook for this spring. And we're going to talk about the rail mergers, too, that were just approved here this recently. I think it was this past week. And that's on Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central. And then we're going to wrap with Dr. Al Kurtz to talk some fat and calf starter rations. A reminder, too, that if you aren't able to join us live for any of our Feedstuffs 365 sessions, they're always available on demand on feedstuffs365.com. So you can go and watch them anytime you like. Until next time, for Feedstuffs 365, I'm Sarah Muirhead.